What is up, guys? I am here with Colin Johanson. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
All right. So the first question everyone wants to know, can you remove stealth from thieves and give it to the Guardian?
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. No plans for that, yeah.
Okay. All right, that's okay. That's fine. A lot of people are asking about capes and cloaks and stuff like that, because in Guild Wars 1 there were some capes. Anything like that in Guild Wars 2 going to be coming out?
It's something that, in particular for me, as a diehard Guild Wars 1 fan, I look back at that and I miss my capes so bad. It's something I really want to get out there. I'd like to get in the game. It is surprisingly complicated in Guild Wars 2 to be able to do that, the way that the character moves and all the pieces that tie to him. That being said, it's something that we are trying to work on. We actually have folks who are in their free time working on that project right now, and a lot of people who are really passionate about it. And so it's not something I can give an ETA on, but I can say it's something that we are really trying to find a way to do, and it's really important to us.
So I feel like it doesn't clip inside of your hat feet and stuff like that, right? I gotcha.
That's the real big challenge. It's just animation-wise, it's so much more complex now with 5 races and everything that we didn't have in Guild Wars 1. There's just a lot more considerations we have to take, and there are a lot of things that are slightly above it in priority, but it's something where there's a lot of people who care so much they're taking their free time to try to figure it out right now.
You're adding a new tier of materials to the game, right? For the ascended weapons and the armor that's coming on later on. Is there going to be more ascended gear or something above ascended gear later on? Are you guys going for that? Like every year or two you update the weapons or the next tier of crafting?
I really hope not. I think that when we put the game out, our hope was Exotic had a certain amount of time that it would take to get it. And I think we did a really poor job of calculating how long it would take to get them, the effort that would be required. And they ended up just being a lot easier than what we were hoping for. In some ways, it's way harder. Like if you're trying to get them through random drops, it's really hard to get them. And if you just go buy them off of the places that are available on a regular basis, they're really easy to get. You can, in a week or two, you can equip your whole character out. And we really wanted to find a middle ground between that. And Exotic was supposed to be that middle ground. It wasn't. And we felt like we had to introduce Ascended basically to get to that point of this is where we want characters to feel like this is the growth they have available to them statistically. And so we put Ascended in to basically get that in the game. Now that being said, I don't want to promise we're never going to do it because 7 years from now we might turn around and put in another tier. Who knows? Or somebody else might be in charge of the game 7 years from now and they may do it. But to me, I feel like this should be it. This is, Guild Wars is about getting out there and playing and having fun, playing with your friends. It's not about being on this endless gear grind that every 6 months we're putting in another tier of gear you have to go after. So I would say right now our hope would be Ascended, and we're going to add more Legendaries, but they're no more powerful than Ascended gear. The tiers that we have are what we like. We're really happy with them. We're happy with the time it takes to get them. And I don't see any need any time in the near future for us to ever even consider adding another tier of gear.
All right, that sounds great. Another question a lot of people have been asking about is Kanta. What are we planning on seeing that? All right, so a lot of people are asking about new weapons to the game. Scythe, polearm, staffs, anything like that in the future?
We absolutely will do new weapons. I think a lot of the stuff that you would traditionally think of as content you would find in an expansion, potentially new weapons, new races, new regions, major new features. Some of those things we've started to put out a little bit already through Living World. We did guild missions earlier this year. We did one new map. But I think over the course of the next year, you're going to see more of those things come into the game. What form they take, whether it be through Living World or through some other types of updates or through expansions, traditional expansions or some other form, we're still trying to decide how we're going to put all that stuff together and package it. But no matter what, we are going to build those things, and we are still doing them, and we have people working on projects that no one has heard about yet in the background, and we're going to start talking about those later. But really, our first year has been about solidifying the core base of the game and making sure that experience is rewarding and strong and fun. And we still have a little bit of work left to do in that front before we start looking at bringing the game to other regions. But when that stuff is done, our next step is going to be looking at things to how do we grow and expand the features and the core gameplay we have today. And new weapons are going to be things that are very high on that list of stuff we consider, along with taking weapons that already exist and expanding them out to other professions as well. We'd like to do both of those things.
All right, so in a living story, are you kind of using that to expand to different areas as well? Now, I mean, we're talking about like big, like like the Crystal Desert, opening that whole area. Like, would that happen, or is that something saved for expansions or your type of expansions for Guild Wars 2?
Well, I think that I want to clarify one thing, which is I think a lot of our players feel like they're either going to get Living World or they're going to get an expansion, and that they're two completely separate things. And I think that's caused a lot of confusion. In our eyes, they're the same thing. It's things that we do to expand and grow the game and make it bigger and make it more exciting. And if we're doing Living World releases, that doesn't mean that we're not going to do or work on things that you would traditionally find in expansion, or vice versa. Like I said, I think we've already done some things that I would traditionally think of as expansion type content, but we haven't gone really heavy into that area because we're really focused on kind of building that core base of the game right now. As we look to the future, I'll add a 2 in there. As we look to the future, more and more of that stuff that you would traditionally think of as expansion type content, those will be the types of things that you start seeing more of from our releases, along with continuing to update things in the game and make our bosses better, make our dungeons better, make our open world experiences better, and keep the sense that the world is really changing and alive. All of that's really important to us, but one of the best ways to make the world feel changing and alive is to introduce new content, to expand and see other parts of the world. And whether that will come through Living World or it will come through a traditional expansion, like I said, we haven't really decided yet the best method for us to roll that stuff out, but it doesn't change the fact that we're going to do it. No matter what that stuff is coming, and having Living World is not at the cost of doing that stuff. We're going to do both. It's just a matter of when and how we choose to put it out.
Well, we're talking about certain weapons, new weapons. Would existing weapons be kind of shared to other classes as well? Like, for instance, the short bow with the Guardian, for instance, or a gun with the Ranger?
Yeah, I think we absolutely would look at taking existing weapons and expanding them out to other professions. I think we probably would do that before we introduce more weapons. I know Bill Murphy over at MMORPG, every time he sees me, he says, I want a melee weapon on my engineer, and I've promised him someday we will do that. So I'll put that out there. Someday, engineers, you will get some form of melee weapon. My main's an engineer, so I want it to. But yeah, that's the type of stuff that we're looking at is, how can we better take advantage of the weapons that we have? Because the more we plug existing professions into those, the more rewarding the entire game feels. If suddenly a ranger can use a rifle, you care about legendary rifles, you care about drops when you get rifles, you care about all the skills that come along with that. And it's a really nice way for us to grow the game sort of organically rather than having to go out and make a ton of new stuff. We can work with existing things and grow.
All right. A lot of people ask about housing in Guild Wars 2 because, the home instance, a lot of people don't really like it much. You go in, you don't visit it again. And you guys did add the quartz to the place, and I guess that's fine. Will the quartz be used? This is totally beside the question, but will the quartz be used later on, and maybe even the precursors later on, or something like that? Would it be used for a different crafting other than the celestial weapons that you have for it now? Or rings?
I don't know. I think we're still trying to decide what we're going to do with that. I will say the Zephyr Sanctum will come back and visit again. It's a giant floating city. It floats all over the world, and sometimes it will float back again. And so it's very likely that quartz will be something that we tie into other stuff because it's something that can keep coming back. It's not it's not something that just comes in and goes away forever. We really want that to be part of our portfolio of recurring content that we can have each year come back and be things for you to look forward to. And then all of our updates, our hope would be that they are things that are permanently staying in the game and permanently changing the world as we go forward. So that's one of the things we really want to accomplish. As to your other question about
housing and guild halls, you can just wrap those two up.
Yeah, I mean, we've said before, absolutely, someday we will do guild halls. It's something that's important to us. We understand the need. I think the thing for us is when we look at features like guild halls and like housing, we don't want to do what everybody else has done. We don't want to just do some half-assed version of it and get it in the game as fast as we can. And I know that can be really frustrating for our players. They're sitting out there and they're like, why don't we have guild halls? I want guild halls. This is something that's just put them in and it's no big deal. We can do that, but it wouldn't be what we want to do. The vision that we have for our game is to always take the core concepts of what you've seen in traditional MMOs and do something more with it. Make it something that you could never imagine initially about what it could be. And so when you see those types of features in Guild Wars 2, they're not going to be what has traditionally been done. And that means that they're going to take longer for us to build, but we absolutely are looking at those. And those are things that are, very important to us to create a bind to the world for players, a sense that you and your community are part of the world. I think guild halls and housing and the ability to own a part of the world is a really important part of having that sense of a living, changing, dynamic world. And so it's something that, it's pretty high on our list of stuff that we're talking about.
What about guild versus guild?
I think the first thing that we need to address before we even consider what we want to do with things like guild versus guild is in competitive PvP, there's currently no way for you to really build a roster or build a team that you recognize as your team, or to recognize that team as being tied to a guild. I think you can do that unofficially, but we really want to be able to get that support. So in our core PvP gameplay that we already have, you have that concept of being able to play with your guild and have it recognized as your guild, and being able to build an official roster of your team and have that play. So that would be the thing that we would look at doing first. I think anything else that we want to do with guilds will be things that come a little bit further down the road. We have a lot of really cool ideas in the back of our heads about stuff that we want to do with guilds. Much like guild hall and concepts of housing, they're much more complicated ideas than things people have traditionally seen. And so these are things that are going to take a lot longer for us to put together and develop and understand exactly what that means for our game. But things like having more activities you can do with your guild in general, and I'm not going to go into specifics, but I'll say that concept, I think, is what our game should be all about, is you playing with a community, you making a group of friends. I think, World versus World is about you and your world as a community coming together, and it should be about you and your guild inside of that battle coming together. Our open world PvE experience should be about you and the people of your world coming together to do things together. And we want to build content that is about you and your guild in our open world coming together. And I think guild missions is a nice start down that path, but we have a really long ways to go. We're going to showcase something today that kind of starts the step forward into where we're going with that stuff. So in about an hour, people will see that for the first time. So that's really exciting. I'm stoked to see people get that out there.
What about, especially for what we're going to see right now, bigger parties other than 5 men? Do you think like guild parties or something bigger than just 5 people? And I guess it would be kind of hard to put all the faces in the top fan corner, but being able to see them on the map and stuff like that. Any plans on that?
Well, we have squads already where you can team up with a really large group of people, but we really don't support it with a lot of UI. We don't support it with a lot of commanders. Can't really do that much yet. They don't have really a lot of functionality when you're a commander. You basically just run around with a tag, and you can chat in squad chat. That's it. Down the road, I think if we're going to have these types of encounters and we're going to have these types of experiences, we have to be able to support larger groups of players interacting and playing together. It's another thing where this is a larger project that's going to take some time to put it all together, but it is something that's important. I think if we're going to make content that makes people want to do that, we have to provide systems that support them being able to do that socially. So absolutely, it's something we want to do. What form that takes, I can't say, but it is, we have squads. We'll probably start there as the thing that we would try to improve.
You mentioned legendary gear in this blog post, right? Looking forward in 2013. And you said that armors are not coming this year, but other legendary gear is coming this year. So I'm assuming it might be around rings or amulets and stuff like that. And what would be coming this year other than the armor for legendary?
Well, it'll be one type of legendary. So it'll either be rings or amulets or accessories or a back slot, one of those. And we haven't decided yet which one we're going to put out first, but one of those categories will be the first additional legendary category that we put out. And similar to the tactic we've used with Ascended gear, we don't want to just dump it all in the game at once. I think that's really overwhelming to players. We really want to try to slowly introduce these, give people a chance to really understand the systems, understand how they work, make progress towards building one before we just throw another thing out there. And we also need to make sure that they're visually compelling enough that you want to get them. I think that's a really big part. You said the stat changing thing, that's going to help a lot to make legendaries feel more useful and more impactful. But the visuals on those are really important too. This update that we have coming out next week is actually increasing the visuals on a lot of the legendaries that are a little lackluster right now. And we want to keep that in mind with anything we do with legendaries in the future as well. The other thing that you'll see this year is you will see the ability to build a precursor. And it's not going to be next week. It'll probably be, as we get closer to the end of the year. But we're absolutely going to add that support so that you can make your own precursor and feel like you're making progress towards getting one of those put together. Very likely it's going to be through crafting. We haven't completely finalized that, but I think it's more than likely where that's all going to drop in.
Come to think of it, would legendaries have the rings and amulets? Would they have some type of aura or something to go with it? Some aesthetic?
They might, yeah. We haven't finalized what that would look like yet, but I think we'd like to have some form of visual representation that you have that, even if it's subtle, just to really pay that off. And it would be the only, for those item types, legendaries would be the only ones that would have that if we went down that path.
All right, nice. Dueling in PvE.
Someday, we would like to have dueling in our game. I think right now you can do the really awkward version of it by buying a custom arena, making it small enough that you can duel in it, and then you go play there. At least you can do it. I realize that's not really what people are asking for, but it's a start. And long term, we would absolutely like to have some form of dueling in the game, where in the open world you can challenge and fight people to a duel, something along those lines.
Right, we want to duel with our legendaries and stuff like that. See, that's the that's the I have to. Obviously, with expansions or your guys' type of expansions, Tengu, or new races will be coming. Would it be like Tengu or Kodan, or of course you probably can't release much with that, but Tengu was like sort of supposed to be in the game, so maybe Tengu.
Maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of races that I think people can look at and say these would be the ones if they added a new race to the game. Clearly, it would come from this pool of races. I see the forum threads all the time where people are talking about what race should they add next and what should be the next playable race. And we always get a kick out of those. There's always someone who picks something really weird and puts it in there. But there's a kind of core group that people are always asking for. And whatever race we decide to add to the game first, it will be one from that core pool that people have been talking about regularly. But I can't tell you which one. And I can say that you're not the bigger new releases that we're going to do, when we're looking at bigger features or new land masses, stuff like that, it is very likely they won't all be accompanied by a new race. I think sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. And so that's something to think about. Is it doesn't mean the next thing that we do is going to have a race in it. That could be something that's coming further down the road, but absolutely we will add more races to the game.
I heard you will be, a lot of people play Warrior, as we were seeing the stats for Michael Bryan kind of released the stats. I was wondering, I heard that a big nerf is coming to Warrior, and they might remove them from the game. Do you have any words on that?
I haven't heard about that, no.
Hard mode for dungeons.
Very unlikely. I think one of the interesting things that you're going to find if we start splitting up people more and more between different dungeon types. We already have story mode and explorable mode. If you add a hard mode on top of that, basically what you get is a really fractured community of people who are all across all these different types of content, and you can't find people to play with. And that's something that we're really cognizant of, really aware of, and we're very concerned about, is we don't want to fracture our player base. It is the eventual death of any MMO. The more areas and regions and game types you keep adding, if you're not offsetting that with other stuff, you end up basically killing your game in the long run. And so we're trying something very different. We're trying to find ways to naturally progress and grow, but drive people back into all the content we build and bring them into the newer stuff at the same time. And so whatever decision we decide to take down that path with dungeons, we want to keep that in mind. I think what is more likely is some explorable dungeon paths will become much harder and will be thought of as these are the paths you do if you're really amazing at the game. These are the ones that are, in the Guild Wars 1 parallel, this is the Deep, or this is, Urgoz. We would like to have some dungeon paths that feel like if you're incredible, those are the ones you do, and they are that much more rewarding for it. Fractals is intended to be that as we continue to update Fractals. And we're going to do a lot of updates to Fractals this year. As we continue to update Fractals, we'd like to make the higher tiers of that feel like that's also where you go. If you're a really amazing dungeon player, you play into the higher tiers, and it rewards you for that. And I realize currently at higher tiers, it really doesn't feel that much more rewarding, and it's something we want to address. But I feel like we have all the pieces now to do it. We don't need to add a hard mode. We just need to take what we've got and make it better.
You ever think of expanding more than 5 players in the dungeons, or 5 players is where you guys are sticking at?
For instance dungeons, I think it is extremely unlikely we would ever go with more than 5. It's a nice number to be able to find people to play with and go. I think one of the things that we saw in Guild Wars 1 and in other games that go even larger than, they are up in the 10s and 20s, it can be really hard to find people to play with. And the smaller that number is, and we feel like 5's a nice sweet spot for having enough party coordination required, but you can find 5 people to play with. And in Guild Wars 2, it helps that they don't have to be specific professions either. You can just pick people who are going to be really fun to play with. But we don't want to have more waiting to have fun. That's what we like to call it when you're sitting around trying to get your party all together. We really want to just get you with 5 people and let you play. So I think it's very unlikely we would do that. Experiences that are larger than that will almost always be in the open world where everybody can come together and experience them. But we do want to make those a lot more challenging, a lot more rewarding, and a lot more fun. And we're going to show you one of those in just a little bit too. So there you go.
Kenta. Account-bound legendaries. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know. It's something where we're aware of kind of the difference between Ascended all being account bound, Legendaries not. and it does feel a little strange that it's set up that way. There are some good reasons for it, and that Legendaries takes so long to build. You really want that capacity for somebody to not have to go through that entire process to be able to pick one out. But at the same time, it kind of contradicts that overall goal of, hey, I've played the game like crazy and I'm able to actually make one of these.
What do you guys think about that? I just don't like the transmutation stones. I just hate them. Like it. So what happens is it happens especially with the back pieces. You guys toss out the nice docked octopus back piece and the wings and stuff like that. If you make a ascended back piece, right? And it costs a lot of money, a lot of ectos, a lot of everything to make one of those. You put the skin that you want on that piece, right? And this happens with everything pretty much, not just the back piece. Now, in order to get that back piece, you have to make another back piece in order to put a skin that you want. Like, for instance, you get the Shatter's skin. You would have to kind of replace it. And that kind of sucks.
Forever, right, basically. Yeah.
So you would have to keep making back pieces over and over again. Is there anything, maybe, for instance, what about taking the skin off? Would there be something in a jump store you could take the skin off of the back piece?
Well, we have a couple things coming. We effectively have a transmutation splitter that's coming soon, which allows you to break a lot of that stuff off. It's primarily to help fix people who transmuted legendaries, but anyone can use it. I think the bigger issue is the fact that you have all these skins and there's no place that you can save them forever. You can't unlock the skin and now you have it unlocked. And then you could go back and pay transmutation stones to put that skin on stuff. But you could go put another skin that you've already earned too. I think that is really the key component that's missing, is that sense of a wardrobe or a collection where you get to keep all your skins forever. And that's something that we're very aware of. We've said before that we're looking into options to help resolve that. I think Guild Wars 2 is at its core a game that's a lot about collecting all these unique skins and unique looks and everything. And to not have a way to really easily collect and use those, I think, is a shame. And it's something that we will address at some point.
You guys did a good job with the account wallet and stuff like that. So, I mean, I know more is coming definitely for that. One more question. All right. You know what? Two more, because I really like this one. Skill build templates like you had in Guild Wars 1, because I mean it's fine going back to the trainer to reset your skills and reset your guild, your build and everything like that. But when you're going through different dungeons, you kind of don't want to be the tanky guy. You kind of want to be damage or something like that, or you're switching your gear. A lot of people have all their gear in their inventory. Wouldn't it be a lot easier, even if it's in a gem store? I wouldn't care. Just being able to have more build templates.
Yeah, it was a great tool for us in Guild Wars 1, and I'm sure at some point something like that will make its way into Guild Wars 2 as well, just because it is incredibly useful. It's great for our players. It's convenient. I think it is very likely you would see it in PvP first, because PvP is so much simpler. We don't have to deal with all the different item types, all the different things that you have saved up. It's basically just save your build and play the game. So it's very likely any type of template system would come out in PvP first, and then we would look at expanding it to the rest of the game down the road. But it is something I think that it would be great for our game to have, and there's no reason we're not going to do it. It's just a matter of when.
What do you guys think of farming in Guild Wars 2?
What do you mean by farming?
All right, so recently we started doing champion farming, right? That's a new thing now. Everyone's like champion farming. Everyone's getting gold from that. Do you guys frown upon it, or you guys are okay with us farming? Is it part of the game for you guys, or was it designed with that in mind to farm the champions? Because players were going to farm it, obviously. Right?
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing about farming is it's not like it just suddenly popped up. There's a group of players that always look for what is the fastest way that I can make the thing that I'm looking for. And there is a group that always plays that way. And even if it's really grindy and they do the same thing over and over again, even if it's something that they don't want to do, if they want that reward, traditionally that's what they do. And it's true of every MMO ever made, and it's just the way that certain people play. And you really are never going to change that. You can't force them to not do it. In forcing people to not do it, you tend to actually hurt the rest of the player base more than actually help solve the problem. So I think there's a really careful balance there. I think what we would like to do, and I'm not sure we're there yet, but I think we're much closer now than we were, is we'd like those people to feel like when they're playing and getting these rewards, they're just playing our game. They're out in the world, they're playing, they're having a great time, they're playing with everyone else. They're not ever trying to break the rules of the game to get the rewards. They're just naturally playing the game. So to me, the best place we could ever be at is people who want to farm feel like the best thing that they can do is go play a dungeon and play it really well and defeat it. Go out in the open world and join up with a big group of players and beat as many events as they can in a row and rapidly beat events. It's to play a lot of different content and play events here and then go play this event chain and then go play this event chain. That's a really great thing to say. It's an extremely hard thing to do. You can do really controlling things like every event in the game you can only do it once per day, or every champion in the game you can only kill it once per day. But that's terrible for most of our players, and it's not fair to everybody else to do that just to try to encourage the farmers to spread out. So what we're trying to do is find a nice happy medium somewhere that gets people out in the world, gets them playing together, gets them feeling like they're not in conflict with one another, which is, I think, to me, the biggest problem with the current champion farm. Is there's nothing wrong with that. It's just playing our game. It's killing champions and playing the game and running in big groups together out in the open world. That's great. That's exactly what we want people to do. But it does create a conflict where if people are killing the wrong champion in the wrong order, that people start yelling at each other. It creates conflicts where we have certain places where people intentionally fail events to get events to happen more often. And we don't want that either, right? Our game should be about playing together and succeeding events, wanting to win, wanting to drive forward. So any changes that you see us make will be in that vein of trying to encourage people to play it more like the game is intended to be played. But we really don't have a problem with farming as long as it's not degenerating and taking away from the rest of the game and ruining other people's experiences. We just want people to get to the point where the way that they farm is they play our game. And I think that's really hard to do. As crazy as that sounds, it is something where people always find some way that they can do something and get around it. And we'll get there, but I think we have no problem with people just playing the game and farming if they want to.
I mean, the new update that you guys did with the invasions, that kind of helped the whole thing pretty much. I mean, some people didn't like it, but for me, like, of course, I liked it as well because it tells everyone everywhere on your server, hey, go here, and basically you're gonna get champions, you're gonna get everything, and you're gonna get a humongous reward at the end. So great at that. Thank you very much.
Hey, no problem. Absolutely. Yeah.
Kanta.
You're
about to say something. Ilona. Not Ilona either.